Hey, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to round 4 of the AROC Racing League's Historic Championship for 2025. It is great to be back on your screens. Folks, we're here at Knockhill, a bit of a favourite of mine when it comes to our touring car action, that is for sure. Let's see what these GTA 1750 105 series cars make of it as well. Just under 8 minutes to go in qualifying in this session, and it should be a good one. Andrew Whitehead currently leads the charge at 56.7, very short lap here at Knockhill. Then it's Matt Daly, 56.7 as well, only 300ths of a second separating those two drivers. It's Miles Davis, who we're on board with at the moment, in P3, followed by Alan Matthews, Andy Webb, Jack Hodson, Steve Knight and Guy Swarbrick, your 8 competing drivers so far this evening, as Miles Davis echoes something that is a bit of a common theme so far in our running in practice, and that is getting these cars up on 2 wheels. And there we go, well executed Miles, not just getting it up on 2 wheels, but getting it on the roof as well. Andrew Whitehead negotiates that perfectly, so he's able to continue on lap, not looking like it's going to be all that much compromised. Actually loses out a little bit through that middle sector, very short sector here, as I say, only 18 seconds before we run up through sector 3 and bring an end to the lap with the Taylor's right-hand bend. It's named after myself, of course, that's a complete lie, but we run up the straight before you head into the Duffer Stip, just into the almost like a reverse kind of corkscrew Laguna Seca, I guess. And in these 105 series cars, it will very much upset the balance, so it will be a very fine driver indeed who negotiates the race weekend without putting a foot wrong at this very technical circuit. It's high speed, it's got those technical parts as I mentioned, tyre barriers are so easy to clatter, curbs that are very unforgiving, all the great makings of a fabulous racing venue here this evening at Knockhill. Just over 6 minutes to go in qualifying then. Andrew Whitehead is leading the charge as we head into our 4th round of racing. Obviously we enjoyed some Giulietta action last week at Alton Park, a local circuit to myself. This one just a little bit further away. We are actually going to go on board with Matt Daly. Has gone purple sector 1 at the start of this lap. He is currently heading up on through down towards the chicane before we run through Clark, and this is the sweeping railway not so straight, I guess, before you head into Taylor's. A prime overtaking opportunity here at Knockhill, where you got to carry the momentum up the uphill crest of this right-handed hairpin at the end of the lap in order to make sure that these 105 series cars can get a good run down at the start-finish straight, because as I've mentioned in the past, these cars, they do need to be climbing on cam. You do need to keep the revs high in order for you to be in that power band. These are fantastic twin cam engines, of course, but they do have their foibles. They're an old school engine, that's why we like them. But you've got to keep the revs high, you've got to keep that momentum up in these cars in order to make sure that they can climb to those speeds that they can actually achieve. They're certainly not bad in a straight line. You've just got to work for it, which is what we like to see. Matt Daly did lose out big time through sector 3 on that run through Taylor's. Doesn't improve this time round. Let's see what he can do as we head into the final 5 minutes of this session. Jumping on board then with a fantastic view inside the car of Andrew Whitehead's running. I'm confused as to why it's automatically shifting the camera, because it's not set to do that, but we'll stay on board inside the cockpit of Andrew Whitehead's car. Bit of a helmet cam here to give us an idea of a decent run around this Knockhill circuit. So you push out to the outside of the circuit to set yourself up nicely for that drop in elevation down through the Duffer Dip. We've seen it in the past in the Giuliettas as well, just how easy it is to upset the car running down that elevation change. It really does mess with balance. But we run through towards the chicane there. Over the sausage curbs goes Andrew Whitehead. That's Steve Knight in front, going onto the gravel. That moves himself out of the way effectively. Andrew Whitehead really pushing on this lap, using as much of the track and then some in order to try and find some time. Hasn't quite worked out so far on this lap. Doesn't improve for the first couple of sectors, and now we have just that run up Taylor's right-handed hairpin to go. Just about missing the apex there, bit of back-end slide before he jumps back up the straight on the throttle, I imagine, pretty much throughout all of that corner, in fact, before we head towards the end of the lap. I doubt it's going to be a massive improvement, this one. Certainly isn't. It's a 57.5 for Andrew Whitehead. Let's see who else can we jump on board with as Andrew Whitehead gets the car up on two wheels once more. Through the chicane we go then with the Matt Daly. This is a fantastic view of just how much is going on in these cars if you're driving them. Just look at how close we are getting to the edges of the circuit, to those tyre walls. Makes it just that little bit scarier when you're on board, doesn't it? But we have just the run through the railway straight for Matt Daly to negotiate. No improvements to be found on this lap either. So we jump up through Taylor's once more. There we can see cranking the steering lock in, cranking the opposite lock in as the back end wants to step out with that corner, with the camber in the corner on this piece of track before Matt Daly brings an end to that lap. Not an improvement overall, but actually a personal best Sector 3 so far. So can he carry that momentum into this lap? Let's see. Dropping down the reverse corkscrew in effect before we head on through to Sector 2 in just a couple of seconds' time. McIntyre first, followed by Butchers as we look further down the circuit. The camera really isn't playing ball. That's why. That's because Matt Daly clearly didn't think that his lap went very well, so he's dropped into the pits. Has some traffic to negotiate in the final couple of minutes as we see Guy Swarbrick currently out in front of these two. But it's Andrew Whitehead who still leads the charge with just over a 300th of a second margin to Matt Daly. Very close running indeed. I think it's all to play for in this race, it must be said. Matt Daly obviously has that really impressive racecraft that we've seen so many times. Oh dear, Steve Knight just about manages to avoid finding himself on his tin top and is able to continue on four wheels. That was very, very fine margins indeed. Well done, Steve Knight, for collecting that one as we have just over 90 seconds to go in this session. And now before the checkered flag is dropped, then the drivers will be bringing them to their stints. But as I was saying, it's going to be very close quarters, I suspect, between our two front runners in this session in the race, because Andrew Whitehead, I know, has come in with plenty of practice for this venue across both cars and is poised and has got himself as ready as he can, really, for the racing action this evening. But Matt Daly always is a bit of a slow burn. Not to say that he's slow by any means at any point in the race weekend, that's simply not true, but just seems to build and build and build and build as we head through the weekend. So I think Andrew Whitehead is certainly going to have his work cut out for him, especially later on into those races when Matt Daly just might be able to find a bit of a rhythm, which he hasn't quite found at this venue just yet, has had a couple of mistakes in qualifying. But I am sure it's just going to build that racecraft. It's going to build that race pace. I'm going to be in for a fantastic battle between our two front-running drivers. Our front-running driver in the championship overall, not present this evening for his home race, effectively, Knockhill. Colin Knief is going to miss out on this evening's action. Should be back for the Juliettas, though. He's currently leading the charge in the championship with 116 points ahead of these two drivers. But we'll delve into that in a short while. I want to jump on board, actually, with Guy Swarbrick, currently heading through and in the pit lane. In fact, I don't know why it's told us that we've got a personal best sector. I suspect that was on the previous run, but isn't going to be able to head out to get another lap in this session. So let's see how this session is looking. We'll have to bring an end to running for Miles Davis, Jack Hodson, Guy Swarbrick, Steve Knight in this running. It's Andrew Whitehead, currently on provisional pole, who is going to try and defend that pole by a little bit more if he possibly can. Let's see as he heads up through Taylor's. Hopefully we catch him as he runs up the start-finish straight once more. A 56.756 to try and defend pole with. Can he improve on this lap? He doesn't improve. Well, that will be it for Andrew Whitehead. Up next then, it's going to be Matt Daly. Matt Daly in the car, liveried yellow, heads up on through, climbing ever so slightly. Can he take away pole in this race? Mere 100 separate them now as we come across the line. It's still 300s that separate them towards the end of the session. That leaves us with just Andy Webb, actually progressing very nicely late on in this qualifying session. 58.1 sees him in P3 at the moment. What can he do? Sorry, that sees him P4. Miles Davis still maintains P3. It's 58.099 overall for Andy Webb. He is one of the only drivers, in fact, the only driver to improve at the very end of this qualifying session. So nice work, Andy Webb. That is P4 on the road. Alan Matthews P5, Jack Hodson P6, Guy Swarbrick P7, Steve Knight P8. And that brings an end to our qualifying results. As I mentioned, Miles Davis is out of position owing to the fact that he's not currently in the session. But as I say, that brings an end to qualifying. Catch us in a few minutes as we get ready for some racing action here at Knockhill. And you join us in perfect time. Just as 6 red lights disappear from the gantry, it is Andrew Whitehead and Matt Daly battling it out as we run down towards the Duffus Dip. Into turn 1, we go around the outside with a fantastic start. It's Matt Daly taking the charge in this race. Can we have a comeback, though, from Andrew Whitehead? I think we can. Into McIntyre we go. Down the inside, you run around the outside of Duffus, and that gives you the inside for the right-hander of McIntyre coming up just after that. So it's Andrew Whitehead back in charge in this race. Matt Daly just behind, followed by Andy Webb, Alan Matthews, Guy Swarbrick, Jack Hudson and Steve Knight. Unfortunately, Miles Davis not able to jump in on the action in this race. Not quite sure what's gone on. Hopefully he can get back in for race 2, get some points on the board. But here we see Andrew Whitehead under pressure from Matt Daly as we dive towards the Taylor's hairpin in just a moment. Not quite 8-betting it there. That might mean it's a pretty good defensive line from Andrew Whitehead, keeping Matt Daly at bay as we run on to the start-finish straight once more. Our 105 series cars all heading up in a train formation, with Andrew Whitehead leading that charge, extending the gap ever so slightly now, so around about half a second, with just under 24 minutes left on the clock. Matt Daly pushing on as much as he dares, pushing over the sausage curb, and as he's already found out in qualifying, it is unforgiving. It is certainly a challenging drive to drive on 2 wheels, but Matt Daly has managed it. He's managed to keep the car spinning in the, or pointing in the right direction at least, which is good to see, and in fact is actually closing up on Andrew Whitehead as we head on through Brabham into Clark in just a moment. Gets ahead of Andrew Whitehead, does Matt Daly, and now takes our race lead. This battling is very much keeping Andy Webb and Alan Matthews in play in this race. Guy Swarbrick jumps onto the gravel ever so slightly, is very much under pressure from Jack Hodson now. Meanwhile, down the inside into Taylor's, I said it was an overtaking opportunity, and there we go. Also demonstrated by Jack Hodson, potentially defending from the outside, though. That is Guy Swarbrick. A fantastic defensive drive there from the grey liveried car. We are side by side, though, with Matt Daly and Andrew Whitehead. This time around, it's going to be Matt Daly with the inside for the first phase of the first corner, and it is Matt Daly who just about maintains P1, although does he, because late on the brakes it's Andrew Whitehead. This is turning out to be a fantastic battle between our front-running drivers here. Up on through Butchers and the chicane we go, and that is Guy Swarbrick, unfortunately pointing in the wrong direction in this race and bringing an end to his charge pretty early on. On board we are then with Andrew Whitehead. Matt Daly followed very quickly by Andy Webb as well. Andy Webb, a newcomer to the series, and has really impressed, as has Miles Davis, as they started their AROC Racing League's careers. This is a fantastic way to put your foot forward, isn't it? Andy Webb currently in P3 in this race. We've had a couple of podiums now from our rookies this year, and I imagine we're only going to get quite a few more as we head on further into the season. Would you believe it? This already marks a third of the way through this 105 series historic championship for the AROC Racing League in 2025. Time has absolutely flown by as we dup on through the dip. That's the new one as we head on through the Duffus Dip. And Andrew Whitehead still leads the charge with around about 0.2 of a second. The gap between himself and Matt Daly. Andy Webb a little bit further behind than it's Alan Matthews in P4. But it's Matt Daly this time who takes the race lead, and that is because of a problem for Andrew Whitehead, who I mentioned very much has the upper hand in terms of overall pace in this weekend so far. Has had those consistent top-end lap times, but for whatever reason, I don't believe there was any contact between the two drivers. I didn't see anything flash up on my screen here. But Andrew Whitehead, what a shame that this race has pretty much come to a premature end. He is only 12 seconds off race lead with 20 minutes to go. Anything can happen yet. We're going to have to wait until a later phase of the race to see what the pace is looking like. But that is an unfortunate start for Andrew Whitehead, who finds himself now in P5. Meanwhile, Matt Daly leads us with a 2-second gap down to Andy Webb, running in P2, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong there, folks. His current highest scoring position, if he was to finish in this race, in this position as it is. So if he stays here in P2, that will be his record high so far in the AROC Racing League. So that'll be nice to see if that is the case. Alan Matthews, a podium regular, currently on course to take back another podium. Guy Swarbrick jumping into the pits. He did mention some practice woes, shall we say. I think his attrition rate was around about 40%, keeping it on the grey stuff. And unfortunately, that has caught him out ever so slightly in race 1. Hopefully, he's currently setting up the car, getting himself ready to head back out on track, get a bit of practice in, maybe a few tweaks to the car as he gets ready for race 2 coming up next. 20 minutes left on the clock then. We're on board with Jack Hodson at the moment. A fantastic look inside the vehicle. Jack Hodson is infamous, in fact, for being able to drive telepathically with no steering wheel equipped in his vehicle. This is a Jack Hodson trait, and he hasn't got a championship yet, and I'm not a racing driver, but I might give him a suggestion. If you equip a steering wheel, there's a couple of tenths to be found. So keep chipping at it, Jack Hodson, and one day you'll get there. But he's currently under pressure from our previous race leader, being Andrew Whitehead. Heads down on through towards Butchers in just a moment. Is only separated to Jack by around about a car length. Andrew has that steering wheel inside his car. That is always a benefit as we run on down towards Clark in just a moment. Having a brief glance up the inside, potentially he did, but he thinks better of it. He's actually going to try and pressure his rival into making a mistake, and Jack Hodson just about avoids that. He clips the gravel there. That slows him down ever so slightly, but there was nowhere for Andrew Whitehead to go, so it's still Jack Hodson in P4, Andrew Whitehead in P5 as we head into Taylor's rear end lockup for Jack Hodson. Could compromise him. He goes a little bit deep into the corner. We'll have to wait and see who wins out in the drag race into the next lap, and it looks to be that it is going to be Jack Hodson just about staying ahead as we run on down towards turn 1 in just a moment. Here we go then, side by side. Andrew Whitehead with the inside. It looked pretty easy, it must be said. There we go, it's Andrew Whitehead back into P4 in this race, and slowly but surely on his recovery drive to the forefront of the action. Now, what Andrew Whitehead does have to watch out for is the fact that Matt Daly might not have been quite on his level in terms of overall one-lap pace at this point of the race weekend. But Matt Daly has been released effectively now. Andy Webb hasn't proved to be any challenge so far in this race. He's got no pressure from anywhere near him on track. He can just start getting into a rhythm and posting those blistering lap times. He has done so on this go-around. He's just gone purple sector 2, and that is his fastest lap of the race so far, 56.9. That would have seen him very high in qualifying, by the way. And whilst Matt Daly's able to just cruise along, get out in front, Andrew Whitehead's got all the work cut out for him. He's currently in P4. He's currently the one having to side his way through the field, push on, use up the tyres to try and close up on the likes of Alan Matthews. He has got the pace to do it. It's just a question of how tricky it's going to be for him as we head further into this race. For him as we head further into this race. What we're actually seeing now is a small battle potentially on the cards here between P3 and P2. Last week out at Alton Park, we had some fantastic battles, all scrapping it out to decide the order of the podium. And what we're seeing here is Alan Matthews slowly but surely closing up on Andy Webb. On that last lap, Andy Webb did have a bit of an issue. And Alan Matthews, his best lap isn't quite there with Andy Webb, actually, but I suspect could be very much on the scene here and bringing us a fight for P2. And who is Alan Matthews going to be bringing on for the fun as well? That is going to be Mr. Andrew Whitehead. Andrew Whitehead currently running in P4, as we've just discussed him, but at 57.0 is setting purple sectors at the moment and personal bests left, right and centre, so it is hunting down Alan Matthews and Andy Webb. I suspect at this point of the race the tyres are still pretty healthy as the fuel load is now beginning to drop. There's plenty of wide open throttle here at Knockhill, so there'll be a decent amount of fuel input on board these cars. They're all twin cams, they're not most fuel efficient. But Alan Matthews running it in P3, also finding personal best sectors, as is Andy Webb. So the pace is increasing across the board, but do watch out for Andrew Whitehead, do watch out for Alan Matthews. We're going to be on for a great battle for the lower two spots on the podium here at Knockhill. Do also want to give a big mention to anyone watching along at home this evening. Big thank you for tuning in. If you think that you might have some friends or family who also would enjoy some AROC Racing League action, by all means send them a link, get them watching along as well. I do want to comment, so any queries, questions, I don't know, reviews or rebuttals that you have against anything that I say, by all means fire them in, and I will make sure to give them a glance over the course of the evening. So a big hello to you, those who make sure you like, make sure you interact with the stream and share it amongst those who you think would enjoy some AROC Racing League action. just over 15 minutes to go in this race. We're on board with Alan Matthews at the moment, who's got a good perspective of this battle as he heads down the Duffer Stip. It is P3 for Alan Matthews at the moment, but very much hot on his heels is Andrew Whitehead. A man on a mission. It is the car in, it is being driven by the car in red and white there, as he knows that rightfully he should be scrapping it out with Matt Daly out at the front of this action. These two were class of the field in qualifying. Unfortunately, it didn't quite go well for Andrew Whitehead a few laps ago. There we go. It's Whitehead past Alan Matthews so with ease as we head on through the Clark right-hander. And next, Andrew Whitehead has his sights very much set on Andy Webb up in front. Now, there's 16 seconds already between Andrew Whitehead and Matt Daly. Remember when I said in qualifying that Matt Daly might not be there immediately at the very start of the race weekend, but trust me, when he gets going, there is just no stopping, and that is very much the case here. 13 seconds gap he's been able to build out in the front of this race. We're not even at half race distance yet. That is a mighty gap to say that they had to scrap for it at the very first phase of the race. Andrew Whitehead then 16 seconds, which, given that he was spun around, or not saying he was spun around, or rather, given he was visiting the Scottish scenery, shall we say, is not that bad of a gap, all things. 16 seconds. I mean, 10 of that would have been the stoppage itself, and then obviously he's had all of the scrapping, and Guy Swarbrick is still enjoying some Scottish scenery as well. That was a lovely new art installation, briefly, that presented itself on the run out of Clark. Guy was very quick to jump on the back to the pit lane button. He has been struggling and testing the car, shall we say, in this race one, as he waits to dive out the pits, and here we go. Shouldn't see him again. So that was a bit of a Guy Swarbrick jump scare running through Clark then. I'm glad he's still pushing on and persevering, though. That's what it's about. It's not necessarily about getting those big wins, and we just want to see everyone having fun, enjoying themselves out there, and getting some laps under their belts in some fantastic AROC Racing League's machinery as well. Anything with a Scudetto heading around one of these tracks is good in my books. Doesn't matter where you are running in the order. And speaking of the order, that would be a good time to have a look at our championship order, wouldn't it? Although we do have a battle very much brewing on our hands for P2 on the podium here. So Andrew Whitehead, I'm sure, will give us some action in just a second. In fact, he's going to. There's only half a second separating these drivers as we run around the railway straight, ready to head into Taylor's. That was a great run out of Clark for Andrew Whitehead, which really made the difference in terms of his pace. Carried that momentum into Taylor's here. Has to have a look around the outside. Haven't really seen an overtake done that way around Taylor's just yet, but might be able to do so in just a few minutes if he keeps this pace advantage up. Then we head on to the next lap of this race, crossing the halfway marker in terms of time. We, of course, have another lap after that with flames on the overrun there for Andy Webb as we drop down the Duffer Stip and in to McIntyre. Too wide, though, for Andy Webb. Tries to carry as much speed as possible to keep Andrew Whitehead at bay. Unfortunately, Andy, that was just too much to ask of the platform of the 105 Series car here on these vintage tyres, no less. That allows Andrew Whitehead to swoop on through. It's Andrew Whitehead in P2. Now, 11 minutes and 18 seconds. That's a very tall order. Let's see, though, if Andrew Whitehead, having released potentially from his rivals, can close up that gap at all to Matt Daly. I will say that Matt Daly is comfy and in a rhythm now at this point. He's still setting purple sectors, so being very tall. Looking further down the field, though, it's P5 at the moment for Jack Hodson. Still setting personal best. 58.7 was his personal best last time around, and is currently on for another improvement on this lap as well. So it's very good indeed there in the Chris Martin Insurance liveried car as he runs up to Taylor's in just a moment. We have 11 minutes left on the clock, and here's our race leader. We haven't looked at him for a while, but it's our race leader, Matt Daly. looking on at the moment to Matt Daly, who leading the charge, less than 10 minutes to go in this race, had some lap traffic to negotiate, but is cruising along very nicely indeed. Oh dear, just as I say that, jumps up onto 2 wheels, heading into the toughest dip, has collected it though, continues on 4 wheels, which is optimal. It's the optimal strategy, and is running on very nicely indeed, as I say. I'm going to stop saying that. Every time I say that, every time I say... Try it again. Let's see. Let's put it to the test. He's running along very nicely indeed. Nope, there we go. Okay, the curse is cleared. Yeah, he heads round through Railway Straight here, and apparently the commentator's curse very much back in effect here, because every time I mention that, he's running along very nicely indeed. Some things seem to go right. Okay, we're 50-50 then. It all seems to be okay there as Jack Hodson very courteously allowing his rival to come through there as... Actually, no, I think Jack Hodson might be having some issue in the car there, because that's an interesting line on to the start-finish race. Either way, Matt Daly leading the charge. 17 seconds is the gap between himself and Andrew Whitehead. Andrew Whitehead is trying his utmost to close down that gap. Matt Daly is wringing the car's neck for all it's got, seemingly, on 2 wheels more often than he is on 4 at this phase of the race. But it's looking pretty much unchallenged, which bodes well for him in our championship standings. Let's have a look at them as we have 8 minutes left to go in this race. It's Colin Knief who leads the charge with 116 points to his name. Not here this evening, though, which means, as it stands, he will lose the championship lead. Andrew Whitehead's currently a man in P2, separated by 14 points to Matt Daly. So if the results stay the way that they are at the moment, Andrew Whitehead will still maintain P2 in the standings. And in fact, well, actually, no, he'll take the lead in the championship heading into race 1. We'll discuss that more, though, in race 2. But then it's Matt Daly currently with 85 points to his name. He'll jump up as well. Then we have Alan Matthews in P4 with 60. Miles Davis, P5 with 58. Jack Hodson, P6 with 34. Greg Young, P7 with 30. Andy Craig, P8 with 28. Andy Webb, P9 with 28 as well. So they are neck and neck, and Andy Webb will, in fact, jump ahead of Andy Craig in this race weekend. Guy Swarbrick with 24 points to his name. Then we have Mike Hilton, P11 with 21. John Cole, P12 with 15. Paul Millman, P13 with 6. Alex Smith, P14 with 2. And then Steve Knight will be scoring his maiden points this race weekend with 15th in the championship standings so far. Currently have 4 drivers on our lead lap here. These laps do come thick and fast, so it's quite easy to lap others if you've got a few seconds of a pace advantage, and that is what we are seeing so far this evening. Daly still leading our charge with a 17-second advantage. So far this evening, Daly still leading our charge with 7. And in fact, well, actually, no, he'll take the lead in the championship heading into race 1. We'll discuss that more, though. go then, just over, sorry, 3 minutes to go in this race. We're on board with Matt Daly, who's flying along at the moment, I must say. Purple sector 1 so far on this lap. He's predicted, as you can see in the bottom left-hand corner of your screens, folks, or at least you could, a 57 flat at the moment, so not quite good as Match's overall best, 56.6, which would have seen him on pole in qualifying, might I add. But still very impressive running indeed from the car in yellow. And this, as I say, really does heat up our championship fight as we head into race 2. This early phase of the championship is always quite easy to start to put together patterns in your head and think, oh, you know, for example, Colin's doing a really good job. He's got a few race wins already. He's going to walk away with it. But when you are early in the championship, it can quite easily swing around. That momentum can swing back like a pendulum. And that is very much what has happened here. Through just one missed round, all of a sudden, Andrew Whitehead, Matt Daly are very much back within a shout here. I mean, you mathematically can't ignore the likes of Miles Davis, Alan Matthews even. So all to play for in this season's running of the AROC Racing League's historic running. Just over 2 minutes on the clock then. Andrew Whitehead, despite showing really impressive pace, has not been able to close up that gap to Matt Daly so far. I mean, it would have been a very tall order. We were quite far into the race already, and Andrew Whitehead had all that work to do in terms of working his way back through the field. Now, what this does mean for Andrew Whitehead is I can't imagine he's quite as comfortable heading into race 2 as perhaps he was into race 1, because, well, Matt Daly hadn't, at least in terms of qualifying action, hadn't quite shown us just how strong he was looking in terms of long run pace, comparative pace. Now he has shown his cards, and we can see that he's leading pretty comfortably. I suspect that it is going to be Andrew Whitehead who is going to be looking over the shoulder at the start of that reverse grid race, as that's an interesting line for the stip, but at least he points in the right direction. Yeah, as I say there, I suspect that it could be a very closely fought battle in the reverse grid action. A reminder for all of you watching at home, the reverse grid is very simple. It takes the results from race 1, from P1 down to P7, and flips them around. So if you finish 7th in the race, for the likes of Guy Swarbrick, you're going to be starting on pole in race 2. And these two frontrunners here, Andrew Whitehead and Matt Daly, are going to have the work cut out for them heading into race 2, as they have to start very back of the running in our 7th car race this evening and try and work their way through, try and keep the nose clean and enjoy a bit more racing action with a bit of a twist thrown in, shall we say, as we now have under 60 seconds left on the clock. Here we go, then the timer has hit 0. It's Matt Daly who still leads us with 16 seconds on the clock. We are now on the penultimate lap of this race. Matt Daly's heading on through Butchers and into chicane in just a moment, clipping both apexes, hitting the sausage curb up onto 2 wheels. It is really impressive. We've only seen, I believe, 1 car on its roof so far this evening, which is a good run, I think, actually, because even outside of Knockhill, these 105 series cars are very much prone to some roof-based antics, shall we say, and Knockhill is well known for encouraging a set of roof-based antics. So if you take a car that likes to be upside down, and you take a track that likes to make cars go upside down, you're probably going to see some cars going upside down. So to say that we've only had 1 so far, that's a very impressive run indeed. As Matt Daly, apologies, I thought that was the last lap of the race. Seemingly not. Okay, well, Matt Daly, congratulations, a race 1 no, surely not. We're still running along. Okay, ignore the graphics. Reeve was right for once. Ignore the graphics, we are still running. I think the timing system, I assume. The timing system's correct. The graphics system has got confused for some reason. And it is Matt Daly who is still leading us as we are now on the final lap of this race. That's what you can see at the top end of your screen, folks. Ignore those checkered flags. They haven't happened. Nothing's happened. All is fine. Everything's going well. We're running up on through towards Taylor's now in just a moment. Is Matt Daly out of fuel? No, he's just... Oh, maybe this is the end of the race. Oh, dear. Well, this has been an absolute shambles of an end of the race. He's either at the end of the race or he is celebrating. He might just be celebrating the victory. Either during the race. Oh, no, that was actually the end of the race. What we need to do is pretend that race end never happened. If we can just raise the past kind of 60 or so seconds from your memories, folks. You know what? It probably did say final lap, and I'm just really not very intelligent. Either way, congratulations, Matt Daly, with a 17-second race victory. He takes the race lead and takes victory as well. Then we have Andrew Whitehead coming home in P2. And then we have Alan Matthews celebrating, rounding out the podium. Fantastic stuff, Alan Matthews into the gravel as well. Good to see some victory donuts back here this evening as well, folks, might I add. Jack Cotton brings it home P4. Steve Knight is classified P5 in the end. Andy Webb is in P6. Not sure what's gone on there. Might have missed that one, to be fair. And then we have Guy Swarbrick classified P7. I'm going to go away now and recollect myself and my ability to communicate and also understand what is going on screen. I'll catch you guys in a few minutes as we get ready for race 2, the reverse grid race. And welcome back to the action, ladies and gentlemen. Just over 30 seconds now until lights out. I will hopefully remember how car racing works as we get ready for race 2, our reverse grid race. Here to look at our order then. Steve Knight, Jack Hodson's your front row. Then we have Alan Matthews, Andrew White at row 2, followed by Matt Daly and Andy Webb on row 3. Then it is Guy Swarbrick rounding out the reverse grid order for this race. One thing to note about Knockhill is how compressed the grid slots are. Realistically, everyone's kind of heading down to turn 1 at the same point. It's a very tight, packed grid, so it's all to play for everyone in this field. as we do have 6 red lights on the gantry, and we are away for race 2 here this evening. It's a slightly troublesome start for Jack Hodson there. Steve Knight gets away with a decent amount of grip, has the inside as we head into the Duffers Dip, though. Who's going to win out, as we're pretty much side by side with Jack Hodson and Steve Knight? Steve goes for the wide run there, collects it back onto the track, and that is Alan Matthews at the bottom of the Duffers Dip with a little bit of assistance there. Oh, can he collect it? He can. There has been chaos elsewhere through the pack. That is Steve Knight, our race leader now, struggling but being down in the final scoring position. But Alan Matthews, what a save. Oh, that is Guy Swarbrick also enjoying some acrobatics, some 105 series based acrobatics there. That brings an end to the races for Steve Knight and Guy Swarbrick very early on. We jump on board then. What do you know? It's Andrew Whitehead and Matt Daly who now lead us to Taylor's in just a moment. It's as if the reverse grid never happened. And it's almost like a replay really for Andrew Whitehead. I'm sure that's what he would have wanted after how race 1 turned out. Now it's his opportunity to try and make amends, but it doesn't play out there. The commentator's curse in effect once more, and it's Andrew Whitehead who spins the back end out, running through Taylor's. Is now side by side with Jack Hodson, tips into P5. And what a shame, his race shaping up to be oh so good after the chaotic run through the toughest div here. But is down in P5 once more, has it all to do again. 23 minutes and 4 places to try and make up before he can close upon Matt Daly. He'll be hoping he can work his way through the pack without allowing Matt Daly to just walk away and build up a 15+ second gap, because right now he is looking very much poised to do so. Squirming his way on through Clark before he runs down the railway not so straight and up into Taylor's. He is ahead of Andy Webb as Matt Daly, and Matt Daly is not under any pressure at all. Andy Webb is one of the drivers under pressure at the moment. He is under pressure from Alan Matthews. Alan Matthews, who, let's not forget, on lap 1 we saw using his roof to his advantage, is how I'm going to phrase that. And runs up onto the start finish straight, has a gap of around about 0.6 of a second to Andy Webb, but is very much all of a sudden in a position to fight for position, which it didn't look like he would be on lap 1. Here we go, fighting for position though. It's Jack Hodson versus Andrew Whitehead. Andrew Whitehead down the inside. There was a very brief glance of contact between the two drivers as they were side by side. It was a brave move by Andrew Whitehead, but the gap was there, and also it was a really tiny bit of contact there. That's a little bit of a racing incident, if I do say so. But Jack Hodson is able to get back underway. I mean, the car was looking pretty upset anyway. Both drivers were carrying immense speed into turn 1. They looked a little bit quicker than perhaps we otherwise would usually see heading into that position. So perhaps unsurprising that there was a little bit of an issue there. But Jack Hodson continues on in P6. Steve Knight's up into P5 despite his unfortunate race start, and then we see Alan Matthews and Andrew Whitehead. Andrew Whitehead's on the scene already and trying to find a way past Alan Matthews. Can he do so? Well, he's not quite side by side just yet. Can't benefit from any little bit of slipstream advantage as Alan Matthews tries to squeeze Andrew Whitehead pretty much off the circuit. They both do survive. They're both side by side. Andrew Whitehead with the inside into the toughest dip, and he makes it through. Does Andrew Whitehead up into P3, and now with a chance of scoring a podium. But Alan Matthews, a great move down the inside. Look at that, saw a gap and went for it. That's what we like to see. There was contact between the two, but what a brave move from Alan Matthews there. I am sure Andrew Whitehead is going to try and find a way past in just a moment, but this is a really unfortunate turn of events for Andrew Whitehead to charge for the field in this race. The momentum he had just half a lap ago was looking really good. He was going to be able to close up on Andy Webb and then potentially set his sights on Matt Daly up in front. Now he's still in P4. He's got to try and find a way past the white and green liveried car with the Auto Italia livery on it. So we head through Taylor's now once more. Are we going to have a replay of the fantastic fraught action that we saw just a lap ago? Let's see then. We rise the elevation to get ready to start the next lap. It is Andrew Whitehead staying behind Alan Matthews this time, benefiting if possible from any slipstream effect. It's not too effective in these cars. They're not aerodynamically complex, shall we say, but every little helps really, doesn't it? So we head on through McIntyre now. Andrew Whitehead a little bit further back this time around, but I'm sure is just building himself up for an overtaking opportunity to present itself as we head on through the chicane. Does it present itself? I think it does, folks. Oh dear, we both get very messy indeed, but Andrew Whitehead more so. What happened there? Well, we saw Alan Matthews running through the chicane, takes it too quickly, ends up onto the gravel, starts soaring at the front axle pretty much to try and collect the car. Is able to do so, but is running slightly slowly on the exit of the chicane. what that does is that all of a sudden puts Andrew Whitehead in a compromising position. He's about to make contact with Alan Matthews, is able to avoid it, but upsets the car in doing so, and somehow Andrew Whitehead was worse off in that instance. He is able to continue on, but is 12 seconds down now. In just 2 laps, 2 very short laps here at Knockhill, no less. Andrew Whitehead's gone from being very much with a chance of closing up on Matt Daly and certainly being there with P2 to now all of a sudden languishing, in effect, in P4. I'm sure he's going to close up. We're going to see that battle brewing in just a moment, but this is not the way that Andrew Whitehead wanted his race weekend to pan out, given just how good he was looking in practice and quali. Here we go then. What can we see elsewhere? It's Andy Webb versus Alan Matthews as we head up on through towards the railway straight once more. Andy Webb with the inside for the straight, but that means he's going to have the outside run through Taylor's. And as I said, we haven't seen a outside overtaking move just yet. So Alan Matthews defending from the inside. Does that give the inside on exit to Andy Webb? It doesn't quite just yet, but these two are now in the midst of battle. Alan Matthews needs to use Andy Webb as a bit of a buffer zone now. They've slowed themselves down ever so slightly in their battle. This has brought Andrew Whitehead potentially back on the scene in just a few moments. But Andy Webb could be a useful tool now for Alan Matthews in terms of keeping Andrew Whitehead at bay. If Andrew Whitehead has to battle with Andy Webb instead, Alan Matthews has a chance of fighting further in into the race for P2. But I suspect Andy Webb isn't going to go without a fight. Oh dear, he might just do that. The commentator's curse this evening is proving troublesome, as Andy Webb is now finding himself phased into the scenery. I mean, I like Scotland's too, but it doesn't mean I want to be buried within the racetrack. Either way, we continue on. It's Andy Webb in P4 then. That promotes Andrew Whitehead into P3. And now, this is not an ideal situation. If you are Alan Matthews, we run up through Taylor's once more, round the right-hand tight hairpin, and onto the start-finish straight with plenty of speed to be built as you climb on cam, as you climb the elevation, and get ready to start the next lap. I think a bit of netcode lag issues creeping in for Andy Webb there, unfortunately. Really not helping his cause. He's got 100 seconds, I think, which is a tenth of a second, which is not ideal. Nothing, of course, in human time, but in computer time, that's a lot. It's a long time. And Andrew Whitehead running in P3 at the moment, 6 tenths of a second is the gap between himself and Alan Matthews. As we enjoyed a battle between these two a couple of laps ago, I imagine we're going to see very much a similar thing once more. Here we go then, near enough side by side as we run on down towards Taylor's. Up Taylor's we go, and taking a tight line is Andrew Whitehead. Who's going to get the better run? It's got to be that car in red, hasn't it? As we are now side by side, the nose is out in front, and little challenge. This time it's Andrew Whitehead who leads the charge into the toughest dip, which was the pinch point, if you'll call it, between these two cars on a number of occasions through Sector 1. Sector 1 was their battleground, but it looks to be pretty settled this time around. Andrew Whitehead ends up in P2. And Alan Matthews ends up in the scenery. Is able to collect it, which is great to see. But yeah, we see some explorative research of the local scenery on the 5 Series cars. It seems to be when I say things are going well, so I'm going to stop saying that because it does not help. 16 minutes left on the clock, and I'm seeing some very, very bizarrely similar echoes between race 1 and race 2. It's like Groundhog Race in effect here for Andrew Whitehead. It was a strong start in race 1 as it was in race 2. Chaotic in race 2, but it did mean well for Andrew Whitehead and Matt Daly. Then Andrew Whitehead, through misfortune, ends up tumbling down the order, works his way up, ends up stuck around about P4 in some battles, which do slow him down and allows Matt Daly to build up a 16-second gap. It's exactly what we saw in race 1. We've seen it again in race 2. He's certainly got the pace as Andrew Whitehead. In fact, is matching and beating Matt Daly's best time overall in this race so far. It's the second faster on current pace as well. He certainly has the pace as Andrew Whitehead. He's a man on a mission. Unfortunately, look, not on his side this evening. We have 15 minutes to go in this race. I'm sure he's had an enjoyable time out nonetheless, because there's been plenty of action. I've certainly enjoyed it. I hope he has, and you have as well at home watching along. But a less than ideal weekend for the man who started on pole and certainly looks like he could continue on fighting for those still could do so just yet. We saw in qualifying in particular, Matt Daly was using those sausage curbs to a scarily accurate degree, shall we say. Any more, and the car would have been, I mean, it was using about half the tread, half of the tread width on two wheels. It was just kind of sailing along, using barely any contact patch because it was only on two wheels. So he did very well not to take it too far and end up on the roof. Hopefully we don't see that, because Matt Daly is, just as Andrew Whitehead is, I think, very much deserving of race win this race weekend. Let's see how that all pans out. 14.5 minutes to go. Some lap traffic to negotiate for Matt Daly there, and disaster strikes. There we have some 105 series acrobatics. Can he get it back on four wheels? He can. That is good to see. Now, hopefully, he can continue on in the race lead. Steve Knight at the inside there into turn one. Guy Swarbrick is going to potentially be able to unlap himself here. I don't know he will unlap himself. No, we might not be able to, in fact. But that is disaster for Matt Daly, who has had little in terms of issues so far in the racing. But a little bit of a front-to-rear contact between Steve Knight and Matt Daly. Saw Matt Daly pirouetting through the scenery. Is back on track, is pointing in the right direction. But now there's only 1 second separating Andrew Whitehead and Matt Daly. There's 1 second and a Guy Swarbrick as well. So Andrew Whitehead is hoping to unlap, is hoping to get back past Guy Swarbrick, and is able to do so there as we very nearly have contact. Andrew Whitehead goes as late as he can on the brakes to get past Guy Swarbrick, who's obviously trying to keep up his own pace, trying to keep his own race going. And there we go, Andrew Whitehead now into P2, only 0.7 of a second down on Matt Daly. There's going to be some damage on Matt Daly's car. These cars aren't too badly damage affected, I want to say, compared to our touring cars. It's not, I guess, there's no aero really. So Matt Daly should be able to continue on, but I imagine it's going to be a knock to the car, a knock to the chassis, knock to the confidence, really. And all of a sudden, from cruising along, is very much in the thick of it now. Has to unlap himself from Steve Knight once again. Goes much better this time around. Follows him through, does Andrew Whitehead. We now approach half, in fact, we've passed half race time to go. And here we go. This is the break that Andrew Whitehead wanted. We get the race battle for the race lead that we wanted as we head into Taylor's in just a moment. Having a look down the inside, then it's Andrew Whitehead late on the brakes. The gap did open up for him. Andrew Whitehead squeezes Matt Daly out as wide as he can, and there we go. It's Andrew Whitehead into the race lead, but slightly slow up the hill, it must be said. This means that Matt Daly can fight back, can dip in right behind on his rear axle, and could be going side by side here as we head into turn one. Thinks better of it though, and instead remains behind to wait for a more ideal opportunity to present itself further into this race. We head on through into the next couple of corners. McIntyre first, then Butchers coming up next, as it's 0.4 of a second gap between these two drivers, both riding over the sausage curbs. Matt Daly very fortunate to be pointing in the right direction. I'm sure not quite so happy that he no longer has the race lead, but this is the turnaround in fortunes that Andrew Whitehead would have wanted, I suspect. Here we go, then we head down the railway straight once more. Mere tenth separating these drivers. No major gap as having a look down the inside is Matt Daly, but well defended by Andrew Whitehead, covering off that inside run there to make sure Matt Daly can do nothing as he kicks the back end out. That was going to be a really good run actually on the exit of Taylor's as he climbs of the start-finish straight once more. Fortunately, as he was on that throttle, the back end looking like it was going to grip up, did eventually step out. As we run down through the Duff Stiff once more, we get closer and closer. Bit of a concertina effect going on as we now run through McIntyre and Butchers in just a moment. It is really fine running between these two. As we've seen, it is a techy car, it is a technical circuit, so that they are running this close with no major ill effects so far. Really impressive running from these two as they continue on their battle for the race lead. This is the closest the battle for the race lead has been all weekend. What a fantastic run we are getting from these two drivers, both with their own misfortunes in this race, which means that they are poised and ready for what I feel is a slightly more equal battle in this race. So I'm sure Matt Daly really didn't want things to pan out the way that it has. As did Andrew Whitehead, really would have done it without any external influences, I am sure. But at least we get to watch some racing action for our two friends here as they fight for a race victory. as they fight for a race victory. Here we go, we watch our two leading drivers heading on through to the start-finish straight once more, both echoing a similar line. In fact, as we now head on to the next lap, less than 10 minutes to go in this race. Still oh so close between these two drivers, and this is one of the features I love about Knockhill. It is a proper old school circuit. Closing up though, we are as we see Matt Daly heads on for a look down the inside. It's a little bit too far back to make a stick without it being a over brave, we say. So the order remains the same between these two drivers, but Knockhill is so unforgiving. There's no big tarmac runoff. There's just grass and gravel. And that grass and gravel usually is bolted by a sausage curb or a massive change in elevation and camber on the circuit, as Matt Daly explores there through the toughest dip. Is able to continue on four wheels though. That is pretty exciting to watch. I don't know if it's going to be one of those where I'm not sure if it feels worse in the cockpit or if it feels better. I don't know whether these drivers are going to be quite disappointed when they watch it back on the stream, or going to be pretty amazed that, wow, I actually survived that. Let's see though, as they head further in. 0.3 of a second, and Andrew Whitehead is into the gravel. That is disaster for a driver leading this race for the past few laps now. His fortune's turning around, obviously, when he nearly got turned around at the start of this race. Then they turn around once more when Matt Daly has issues, and now, unfortunately, he just drops it into the gravel. This builds up a bit of a gap as we now have 7 minutes left to go in this race. It's Matt Daly in the lead, Andrew Whitehead P2, then we have Alan Matthews, Andy Webb, Jack Hodson, Steve Knight and Guy Swarbrick, your 7-car order in this race. But let's have a look at the order in the championship standings after race 1. So as we mentioned, Colin Knief not present this evening really throws a spanner into the works in terms of our championship standings. Andrew Whitehead is currently your championship leader, 117 points, 1 ahead of Colin Knief. Colin Knief ahead of Matt Daly in P3 with 110. As it stands then, we are going to be seeing Matt Daly taking the lead of this championship. Really exciting stuff from the car with the yellow livery. He was a little ways back at the start of this race weekend, but both currently drivers actually in this race weekend are putting themselves in a very good position overall in terms of the championship. They're bringing themselves right back into that fight, as I say. Alan Matthews also in P3, so another 15 points on the cards. That'll bring him to 90 points, and he will be within 20 of Matt Daly as it stands, 25 of Colin Knief. So that is once again impressive stuff, and it brings him back into the mix in this championship. Miles Davis, fortunately, unable to score points in race 1 owing to some technical issues, means he has to drop out of the running, so he only has 58 points on the board. So a race weekend that actually could have brought him right back into that championship fight now just drops it out. Still 8 rounds to go though, and he's hoping to get some points on the board and bring himself in to a good position. He's certainly got the pace to do so. Then we have Jack Hodson, P6, 46, Andy Webb, P7, 36, and Greg P30. Patrick Guy Swarbrick actually will jump ahead after this race evening. We have Andy Craker in 10th, 28, Mike Hilton 11th, 21, John Cole P12 with 15, Steve Knight P13 with 10, so his first points on the board, and leapfrogs Paul Millman and Alex Smith 14th and 15th respectively. That is your championship standings for this season, and there has been no major change between our runners in this race. It's still Matt Daly ahead of Andrew Whitehead, Alan Matthews, Andy Webb, Jack Hodson and Steve Knight as we start one of the final few laps here at Knockhill. 3 minutes to go in this race, and we look on to Andrew Whitehead, who is finding his own way up onto 2 wheels to bring an end to our running. Let's hope I'm a little bit more clear-cut, and I'm more professional in my ending to this race. But yeah, what a great race. A great weekend at Knockhill, with plenty of excitement. Even if it's not on track, it might necessarily just be with some random car acrobatics. That's fantasy happening. So a big thank you to the likes of Andrew Whitehead, Guy Strawbrick, for putting this race weekend together. Big thank you to all of those of you try to get the words out. So all of you watching along at home, I hope you do enjoy watching this action. Do make sure to get your comments in, get your likes in. Do you have any questions or any feedback, just drop it in on those comments. I am monitoring them as we head on through this evening's running. Yeah, another great weekend out in our historic races. They always provide action, even if, as I say, not everything is happening out on the track. With these 105 series cars, you've just got to look at them heading round, because they make a great noise. They look fabulous, and there's some great noise as well. So there's a sight to behold, even if we are wheel to wheel at various points of the race weekend. Just over 90 seconds left on the clock, then I'm going to be watching our race leader Matt Daly like a hawk to make sure that we are actually going to be able to bring him home in the correct fashion. As we see, I think Matt Daly is now... Oh dear! No, I was about to say he's just trying to see how far he can push it for some style points, but that was probably not the style he was wanting to take that corner, and that now means, in catastrophic fashion, Matt Daly finds himself back down in P2. Just over 60 seconds left to go on the clock. It's Andrew Whitehead, who was probably thinking it's all said and done. That's everything she wrote really for this race weekend. Now finds himself in the race lead. 5.7 seconds is your gap between Andrew Whitehead and Matt Daly. I mean, I'm not ruling anything happening just yet to change that once more. It's Knockhill. It always does this. I remember it in the Juliet as well, and it's looking like it's going to do it again in our 105 series cars, because right at the very last dying breaths of the race, it's all turned on its head once more. It's Andrew Whitehead who now leads us on to the next lap of this race. That next lap is the penultimate lap of this race as well. So we are now starting the penultimate lap of this race. Andrew Whitehead was probably not expecting this at this phase of the running. It has been a weekend pretty much of misfortunes, really, and he is very happy with that. I mean, Matt Daly did very well and is very lucky, actually, that he's been able to continue on 4 wheels. That's something we've seen from the likes of Alan Matthews. We've seen it from Matt Daly twice now in this running, as Jack Hodson is exploring, saying hello to the crowd. That's what he's doing. But Matt Daly doing very well to make sure that he continues on in P2. Twice now he's found himself up on his roof, but able to continue on 4 wheels. If he wasn't able to, he'd be back to the pits. So he's done well there. As we see Andrew Whitehead, who now runs up the start-finish straight once more to start the final lap of this race. A 6-second margin, a margin that perhaps he wasn't expecting coming into this race, because it seems to have gone very well for him all of a sudden, as we are now on the final lap of this race. 5.8 seconds is that gap. Just needs to cruise it home, does Andrew Whitehead. What a turnaround in fortunes for him. I'm not quite sure that's the way he would have wanted it to have gone. And why is he stopped? Not sure what's gone on there. I imagine some type of mechanical issue, and it all turns around in its head once more. He's able to get back underway. Something very fishy is going on here. I hope everything is well in the world of Andrew Whitehead and he is able to push on. But just as we thought race victory would be handed to him, it looks to be then that Matt Daly is going to be taking a race victory in this running. That was going to be a real change for the championship fight, though, so that would have been interesting. In fact, it just makes it more interesting, because I now believe that it's going to be Matt Daly and Andrew Whitehead on equal points. So, heading up through Taylor's, Matt Daly is your driver in the race lead in the end. Looking like a slightly slow run up the hill, it must be said. In fact, crawling up that hill, I wonder if we've got some lack of fuel. Could it be a fueling issue? Very late on in the running, sees Andrew Whitehead take the checkered flag. Congratulations, Andrew. What a turnaround in fortunes it has been. A great run in qualifying, turmoil in race 1, but at least it was all said and done. I can't quite make out what's happened in race 2. I suspect that maybe Andrew White had mistakenly stopped or whatever reason like that, and Matt Daly has very courteously given him back the race win because he has got fuel. So if that is the case, that is true sportsmanship. And yeah, there we go. It's Andrew Whitehead in the end who did take that race victory. That is Matt Daly's prime opportunity there to undo his misfortunes earlier on with that flip. But that just goes to show what a sportsman he is by actually ceding the win anyway. That actually makes our championship quite less interesting because now they are not going to be on equal points. We nearly had a top three all on equal points pretty much, apart from Colin Keith will be a little bit further back. But that means Alan Matthews rounds out your podium with P3, Andy Webb takes home P4, Jack Hodson P5, then we have Steve Knight P6 with Guy Shorwick classified P7. Well, that brings an end to what has been an eclectic evening at Knockhill. I'm still not entirely sure what's happened. At least I knew when the race finished this time around, but I didn't quite know how the race finished, really, because it was all... I mean, I think I need a glass of wine after that one. Either way, that brings an end to the racing action here at Knockhill. Hope you've enjoyed watching it as much as I've enjoyed commentating on it. We'll catch you in a week's time for the Julietters here at Knockhill. In fact, no, we maybe won't. Well, we might. We might, based on what time my flight from New York gets back. And if I'm not hungover. Because you never know what might be drunk on the plane. If I'm not, we'll see. Maybe a stream. Maybe Knockhill next week. Either way, if not, thank you very much for watching along this evening, and we'll catch you shortly for some more AROC Racing Leagues action. Thank you very much for watching this evening, and good night.